hasn't begun operating yet. It was also Nord Stream 1. Both of them got blown up the same day, nearly the same time. Nord Stream 2 hadn't started pumping any gas yet, but Nord Stream 1 had been pumping gas for a very long time until recently. Recently, Putin stopped all the gas going through Nord Stream 1. So there was no gas going to Europe from Russia through Nord Stream 1 or Nord Stream 2. And the day that they blew up was the day or the day before that a new pipeline opened between Norway and Germany that's going to supply a great deal of gas from Norway to Europe this winter. And I believe that by blowing up these pipelines, which were doing Russia no good anyway because they weren't pumping any gas anymore, he was sending a signal that he could blow up the Norwegian pipeline to Germany as well. And if he did that, then it will be a very cold winter for the Europeans, and they won't be able to run their factories. And so their economy will have a very severe crisis. So that seems to be the message he was sending. And of course, he's also threatening to use nuclear weapons, which is the most frightening statements I've seen coming out of any world leader since I was a child.
Right. We're back. I mean, historically, every time there's inflation, despots rise, like Stalin and Hitler and Mao and all those guys rise out of hyperinflation and things like this. If China's in trouble and, Russia hit Ukraine, what are the odds of China going after Taiwan?
It's a possibility. It would lead to a war between the United States and China. And at the very least, it would result in an economic calamity in China, because China's trade surplus with the United States, the amount of goods China sells to the U.S. over and above the amount the U.S. sells to China, is more than $1 billion every day, more than $400 billion a year, that they would lose overnight and never to recover if they invade Taiwan. So that's a very big incentive for them not to do it, because unemployment would go up, it would cause social instability, they'd also end up having some of their cities wrecked, and the Communist Party might be overthrown. So that's probably the biggest reason they're not going to do it this decade.
Well, talking to real estate agents, they're going, I don't have to worry. Arizona's hot. Well, good, because people are migrating here. But where they're migrating from is another issue, and what's happening to interest rates. This guy, Jay Powell, he has to stop inflation because inflation is now systemic. It means it's now going to keep going. And the more inflation runs, it's like the person standing at the pump, pumping gas into their leased SUV, worried about their job, and the price of oil is going up. They're micro. They cannot see past their butt. Can Powell, Jay Powell, the head of the Fed, U.S. Fed, can he stop inflation?
He can if he increases interest rates high enough. And all hell broke out 2 weeks ago when Powell put out the Fed's new projections for how high they would increase interest rates. This was a radical adjustment upward in their projections for how high they're going to increase interest rates just over the next few months. That caused a big sell-off in the stock market. The dollar got a lot stronger. That caused problems for the UK pound. And all hell broke loose in the financial markets. And on top of that, not only are they hiking interest rates, but at the same time, they're reversing quantitative easing. Instead of creating money, they're now destroying $95 billion every month. The
U.S. Fed's doing this.
That's right. Multiply that times 12 months, and that's going to be $1.1 trillion that don't exist 1 year from now that exist today. That's about 13% of all the dollars. As long as the Fed is carrying out quantitative tightening or destroying dollars like that, it's very likely that asset prices are going to keep falling, because all of the asset prices are floating on this ocean of liquidity that the Fed is now draining. So it's like a bathtub. The bathtub is being drained of water and all the asset prices are going down.
That means that their real estate is going to come down because there's fewer buyers. I was at a major bank yesterday. The bank was empty. You know why it was empty? Because they don't need loan officers. The biggest layoffs are coming in the banks right now because banks cannot loan money because people cannot afford to borrow. That was yesterday.
All of the asset classes are likely to fall together. In the past, it didn't work like that. Stocks would go up and bonds would go down and vice versa. But today, they all move up and down together because they're all floating on this ocean of liquidity that the Fed is now draining. So as long as the Fed keeps draining liquidity through quantitative tightening, all of the asset classes are likely to fall together. Times like these are not times to make a great deal of money. This might be a good time to start thinking about improving your business, creating your own business, getting into business for yourself, something you can control, building up your own business and worrying less about speculating in speculative assets in the hope that they'll go higher in the near term, because they're probably going lower. There will be a day when things turn around. Last year, I was very bullish on the stock market because the Fed was creating $120 billion every month and pumping it into the markets. And as long as that carried on, it was clear asset prices would probably keep moving higher. But now the reverse is happening. So it's not at all surprising that the stock markets are down between 20 and 30% so far this year. They probably have significantly further to fall. Property prices are probably going to start falling at a double-digit rate by the middle of next year. And things are not going to turn around for a while.
And today they're crashing, and their housing price, their 401k is probably crashing.
If they just stop printing, then things would more or less be level. But they're actually destroying money now. You can say they're unprinting money at the rate of $95 billion a month. And when they do that, they have these bonds that the government has issued. When they mature, the Fed takes the money from the government. Then the government has to get money from somewhere else, from the public. And that reduces the amount of money that exists in the economy. And so with less money, that pushes up interest rates. That makes the bond prices go down and the interest rates, the bond yields go up. So quantitative tightening is another way of tightening monetary policy and pushing up interest rates and making it more expensive for people to borrow and consume or borrow and invest.
If I have a bond that was paying 5%, but the new bond is 8%, what does that do with the value of the bond?
It pushes it down.
Right.
Because no one is going to want to own the bond that's yielding 5% if the new bonds they can buy yielding 8%. So it causes the price of the old bond to fall until its equivalent yield also comes into line. If it falls enough, then the yield would be 8% on that bond as well.
What Richard is saying is so important is because Wall Street for years has been selling 60-40, 60% equity, 40% bonds, and they're all dropping. You know, it's all dropping right now. And today I own gold mines, silver mines. I own real oil. I don't have oil stocks. I own cattle. I own everything the Fed cannot print. So remember, when they say Bank of England and they say the Fed, they're the same things. And the English pound nearly took it. And the reason they had to start printing again, which is causing more inflation for the English people, is that the pensions are going to collapse. The same thing is going to happen to America because it's already happened. People don't know that. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the most dangerous time in world history. But let me give you some bright news. In the Marine Corps, before I went to Vietnam, I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, where we had advanced weapons, guns and rockets, machine guns and all this stuff. We had to practice crashing 3 times a day. Now, crashing an empty helicopter is different than crashing a helicopter with guns, rockets, machine guns, and ammunition on board. But we practiced, and we practiced, and we practiced. So when it came 3 times in Vietnam, because the odds were, my life expectancy as a Marine pilot, gunship pilot, was 30 days. We didn't live very long. So if we practiced crashing, we had a chance of surviving. So I went down 3 times, and my crew and I came back home back in 1973, only to get spit on and hit by eggs by the commie pinkle hippies from the Woodstock generation. And here we are today, and there's no financial education in our schools. Well, the world is crashing. I don't know if people understand that, because in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. 1944, during the Bretton Woods Agreement, the dollar became the reserve currency of the world, but we made a promise to the world that the US dollar would be as good as gold. The trouble is, as Andy Schectman talks about in all this, is that we started fighting the war in Vietnam and the war on poverty in America, socialism. And we didn't have enough money. So we broke the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1971. Nixon took us off the gold standard, and that was the corruption of capitalism. They could print money rather than make work for money. So ladies and gentlemen, we're screwed. Prepare for the crash. And remember, micro means pull your head out of your butt.